Today I want to look at the argument which says human life is getting better, and therefore we're justified, in some sense, in creating more life. Now, there are several responses to this sort of argument. One is that it's not actually obvious that human life has gotten better. And I know people will point to various figures showing, or supposedly showing, that there's less violence, less crime, and so on in the world today than in almost any past century, speaking strictly for humans. And they'll tell us consequently that if you could choose a century to live in, you will be wise to choose the present one. Basically, the claim here is that the average human life today is better than it was centuries ago, and better than when humans were in a state of nature, so-called. But is this true? Hobbes famously characterized humans in a state of nature, which is to say, without government, as nasty, brutish, and short, before the formation of laws and establishment of some sort of concentrated power or authority. We lived, according to Hobbes, in a condition of perpetual fear and insecurity. Now, there's obviously some truth to Hobbes' account, but now picture to yourself a modern human living in an industrialized nation who wakes up in the morning in order to perform a mindless task for hours of the day, and sometimes all day, and is forced out of their sleep the following morning to repeat the very same thing. The truth is, if you have any independence or creativity in your veins, you will find this sort of routine intolerable, right? Yet people are forced by circumstances to sell their labor, their time, and their freedom in this way, merely to survive. There's very little, if any, enjoyment in this, and stress piles up rapidly. And where we often spend more time being told what to do, that is being directed by someone else's will, than directing it ourselves. This is what it means to forfeit our natural freedom, so to speak. And so it's worth wondering, right, is selling the bulk of your life to the chains of work, having someone else telling you what to do, having no satisfactory way out of it all, is this really better than the way of life of early humans, or indeed of people who live more freely today? I think it's at least a debatable point, right? I mean, Hobbes may say that early humans lived in a condition which was nasty, brutish, and short, and, I don't doubt this at all, incidentally, but what is this compared to the wage slave today, whose life is drab, subservient, and long? We may not live as much in fear of death, but we certainly live in fear every day of negative experiences of various kinds. Now, something else we need to keep in mind is that better does not necessarily mean good. I find people making the following sort of argument quite often, right? X is better than Y, and therefore X is good. Another way to put this is X could have been worse, or can be worse, therefore X is good. And of course, almost anything can be worse. It doesn't follow that it's therefore good, right? For example, can racism in the world be worse? Yes, it can. Much worse? Much more explicit and pervasive? Yes. Is racism today therefore good? Obviously, no, it isn't. Right? And I think more or less the same can be said about life today. That is, even if we assume that life has gotten, on the whole, better, this does not necessarily mean that it's good. And indeed, we have reason to think that it is not very good at all. Finally, even if we grant, for the sake of discussion, that conscious life will eventually be good, or that many lives are good today, this still does not provide a strong justification for continued reproduction because, of course, this still leaves open the question of whether this good is worth all the bad that will also be experienced. And when we consider the fact that one instance of agony or lonely torment seems to outweigh any amount of good pleasure or happiness, I think we have very good reason to believe that even a perfect world in the future is not worth purchasing at the cost of others' indescribable suffering. And so it seems to me that one would need to make an awful lot of additional assumptions to this to challenge antinatalism on these grounds. So that is all for now, and thanks for listening.